Hello, in this video I'll be discussing floors. Floors are very simple as far as Revit elements go. They're very straightforward. They can be a little tricky if you want to start getting involved in sloping the floors or adding 3D reinforcing, which I will bring up later on in this video. Floors are system families. They require being brought in through transfer project standards. You can't load them like a lot of other families that you have in a library. So if you want to database these, you can keep a file somewhere on your network or wherever, and you could have all your types in there, and then you could transfer them over. You can also copy paste them from one to the other file, but you run the risk of, if you already had that type in your file, it won't overwrite it. It'll just put a second one on there and add a 1 at the end of the name, and that starts getting confusing later. When you go to create a floor, you have a couple different places you can get them from. You can get them from the Architectural tab, and you can get a floor here. If you go to the Structural tab, you can access a floor here. The difference between them is that the architectural floor does not have an analytical element. It can host reinforcing, and it has no cover settings for that reinforcing. It's not a big deal if you accidentally place an architectural floor when you meant to do a structural floor. I'll touch more on that here shortly. So now I'm going to create a floor. I preemptively created a structural plan view at elevation 0, which means it is associated to elevation 0, which means that anything that I draw in this boundary will be hosted to elevation 0. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to place an architectural floor, and once I click on floor, it takes me into a sketch mode where I can choose to pick lines, rectangles, polygons, circles, splines, anything, right? So I'm going to choose rectangle. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a floor here, and I'm going to change the span direction to be the short direction and hit OK. So now we've got this floor here. Now, as I told you, this is an architectural floor. If you click on it, there's a toggle over here that you can change this to a structural floor on the fly. If you check on this, it now adds the ability to put 3D reinforcing, and it gives you cover settings now on this floor. If we were to cut a section, I'm going to cut a section in 2 different directions. The second section is more for when I get into the decking. But we'll go into this view here, and if you click on this, we used a 12-inch concrete floor, which means that this floor will start at this elevation and build downward. And if you were to throw a dimension on here, you'll see it's 12 inches. If we were to enter into the family by hitting Edit Type, it is constructed by layers. So you want to put the main structural component in between the core boundaries. You give it whatever material that you want, set up the way you want it to appear on drawings, and then you give it a thickness. It actually applies a structural material to it, and over here there's a checkbox for variable. What this means is this enables your ability to model sub-elements in this floor and make the floor taper. It could be thicker on one side than it is on the other, and you can handle slopes. More on that later. So now we could also change this to a concrete decking. Here's 6-inch concrete with a 1/2-inch metal decking. And as you can see, because of the span direction, you can actually see these in here. If you go into the type, so what's happening is I added a structural deck, and when I clicked on it, I included to bound above layer. If you were to set this as a standalone deck, what's going to happen is it will put this below the 6 inches, and it will totally be 7.5 inches thick. So for this case here, you want it to be bound with the layer above. Then you hit OK. Now if you were to go to the other section, you see the other direction of it. That's where the span direction in the floor makes or breaks you. If you were to go to 3D and go to this floor, you will not see that in your 3D model. That is only for drawing purposes. One of the things to note is if you place this floor and it's at elevation 0, you can actually give it like a 1 foot raise or a -1 foot recess. Use that strategically, because if somebody in another discipline is copy monitoring this level and you're manipulating your floor to be raised or lowered and leaving this behind, the other disciplines may not get that memo. So you got to be very strategic about it. Where I've used offsets is if I had say a 4 foot deep sump in here and I wanted a floor for the sump and then 4 walls, I will use negative offsets. So if this floor ever gets higher or lower, then the floor is always going to be whatever your negative offset is, 4 feet. So you got to think about what you're trying to achieve. Now, in order to slope a floor, you can modify sub-elements. You can click on the floor, you can click modify sub-elements, and then what's happening is you can pick any one of these, and then you can actually raise this up whatever you want it to be. And we'll hit cancel out of this, and you can see now where it starts at 12 inches and it gets to whatever height that we just chose randomly for that. If you ever want to reset it, you can go up here and hit reset shape, and it will reset it. If you ever want to slope this floor in such a way that it slopes from all 4 sides down to a sump in the middle, what I found is best to do is sometimes you can map it out with some detail lines, right? So I'm going to go and I'm going to just draw a rectangle right here. I want a sump right there. So what I want to have happen is I want a high point on all 4 sides, and I want this to be the low point right here in this. I want this whole area to be flat. So how I would achieve that, click on the floor, modify sub. You can just say modify sub elements, but then you'd hit add split line, or you can just say add split line before you even hit this, and it'll take you into the same place. Now you can start drawing out where you want. Now the reason why I draw these lines is because this does not snap to like 3D entities for some reason. I don't know why. But now what will happen is I can grab these and I can recess these down by -2 inches. Not sure why it didn't take. Now if you're looking here, you can see it recessed down, and now you can put a opening in here. I would not edit your boundary because it automatically decides where those elevations need to be. If you're to go back to this section, you can see our sloping that's going on here. That is one method for sloping your floor. The other method for sloping floors, it works well, but it also fails you in a couple of ways, and I'll show you how. You've got a floor here at elevation 0, and you've got a floor here at elevation 10, and you want this floor to slope from one to the other. If we were to go to the plan view, and while this floor is selected, you can hit edit boundary, and you have an option for slope arrow. So what I'll do is I'm going to click on the slope arrow. I'm going to pick the middle of this, and I'll click the middle of this. Now I've got a slope arrow in here. If you click on it, you can actually modify this to be 10 feet right? And that'll do the trick. You can also say, I want the level head to be at 0, I want the tail to be at 10, and you can set that for 0, and that works also. I find this to be a little helpful if information changes. So we'll hit OK. Now if you go to the 3D view, you can see the floor slopes perfectly fine up, to and from. Where the catch is on this, let me increase my... Where the problem fails you is that it holds this thickness, and this thickness. The problem winds up being is you have this interaction right here, because it keeps this edge vertical, so it means this exceeds the 12-inch. So same thing here. This should really be keep going and go up to about in here. That's where that one there kind of, a lot of times I wind up modeling something like this as a generic model and not using this one. Those are my methods for floors and how to slope them. Thank you for watching my video. Be sure to like and subscribe. There'll be a lot more videos coming.